Hello again. We are Chris Lee and Chase Robinson of Southeastern 16 here to preview and predict UCLA's road trip to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to face the LSU Tigers. UCLA going to rack up the frequent flyer miles this year. You can catch this one at 2:40 Central on ESPN. LSU is about a 23-point favorite with an over-under of 56.5 as we do this, which makes for a predicted final score of 40-17. My model has got LSU by about 18. We're going to talk about both sides of the matchup shortly, but first, a reminder, content brought to you by BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, unwind with over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on all the action. Bet online. The game starts here. Chase, been an interesting year for both teams. LSU rebounded from a 17-0 hole at South Carolina last week. Meanwhile, UCLA has lost a game to Indiana in a blowout and just narrowly beaten Hawaii in a last-minute field goal.
Yeah, this UCLA team, I feel like we have a lot to learn about them. I mean, they're in a tough conference now as they are in the Big Ten, and they got their first taste of Big Ten action there with Indiana in that loss in a game where they really just couldn't move the ball. And so, this is LSU, I feel like, is finding their stride. They're getting things going, and so we'll see how this game goes, but I'm interested to see how LSU responds after that big win against South Carolina.
Let's talk about when UCLA has got the ball. Not been a great offensive year for the Bruins so far. Here are the numbers. Let's see. UCLA is scoring about 14.5 points a game. It's averaging 54 offensive snaps. Third downs have been a big issue for UCLA offensively and defensively. That's going to count for some numbers that don't always add up. It's turned it over 3.7% of the time. That also hurts. It is running it 40% of the time, 4.2 yards per rushing play, 6.2 per passing play. LSU's defense is giving up 27 points a game, 2.2% turnover rate against 60 snaps. It is running the ball, seeing the ball run against it 52% of the time. Yards per rush play against LSU, 5.4, 7.3 per pass play. So not great either way around. Chase, what do we know about UCLA in this side of the matchup?
Yeah, Bruins quarterback Ethan Garbers, last week 14 of 23 for 137 yards. Again, they couldn't really get the ball moving, and a couple of field goals in there when they would get the ball and couldn't quite finish drives. Indiana held UCLA to just 96 yards rushing, 142 yards passing for a total of 238. And so moving the ball is what they have issues doing. And again, it was a low scoring game against Hawaii as well. And so I think that's what UCLA is looking to do and looking for ways they can exploit the LSU defense. They have not been good on third downs either. And so I feel like LSU can try to work to get them in some third down situations because they have not done well at converting third downs this year.
I can't decide whether to be encouraged or discouraged out of what I saw out of LSU's defense last week. And on one hand, big hole early for the Tigers, and they made some plays at the end, but they also knocked out Lenore Sellers, and there was a big drop off to Robbie Ashford. Rocket Sanders ran the ball against them. They gave up almost 400 yards to South Carolina, which is not, which has struggled offensively, but, anyway, at the same time, I guess what I'm getting at, LSU made a lot of changes. Blake Baker put 7 different guys in new roles, either new positions or new starters, and so maybe they figured it out at the end of the game. I don't know. Chase, I think you watched it too. What did you make of LSU's defense last week?
It's not quite yet what I feel like it should be with the corrections and improvements that they made in the offseason. Like you can't put yourself in that big of a hole early. You mentioned it. South Carolina went up big LSU was able to make the stops they needed and get points on the board, but you're not going to be able to do that every time. You put yourself in a hole like that against some teams, you're stuck there. And so
Yeah.
I feel like this defense has to start strong and be able to maintain that throughout the whole game. And that could be concerning if it keeps happening where you put yourself in a hole and aren't able to dig yourself back up. But yeah, that to me there are a few issues on the defense for LSU that could cause some concerns, I feel like, later on in the season.
Yeah, and look, you've still got Harold Perkins Jr., who it didn't always show up in the stat sheet, but just causes so much havoc, makes a quarterback get rid of the ball earlier. He can do things that just are nightmares for offensive coordinators to guard against. So there's that. Let's talk about the other side of the matchup. What stands out to you here with UCLA, Chase?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Again, Indiana, I feel like is a good football team, and so they gave up 42 points to Indiana, 13 to Hawaii. I feel like this defense is really still trying to find their identity, and they it was 21-7 at halftime against Indiana, and they got it early in the third quarter. They kicked a field goal, made it 21-10. They made some key stops on the first couple of drives of the third quarter to stop Indiana and get the ball back. And so that was a good thing for UCLA. But then from really towards the end of the third quarter on, Indiana outscored UCLA 21-3. They couldn't stop them anymore. And so I feel like they had some momentum there at parts of this game, and then Indiana was able to take off again. And so I feel like this defense is inconsistent. They've just got to be able to make key stops when they need to, and they get behind and weren't able to make the stops they needed. But again, Indiana was able to outscore them 21-3 in a quarter and a couple of minutes. And so I think that shows this UCLA defense has some issues.
Yeah, the stats look okay. I mean, 27.5 points a game, that's not great, but they're forcing turnovers 2.3% of the time. Now, teams prefer to pass it 61% of the time against them. They're giving up 6.4 per pass play, 3.8 per rushing play. That adjusts for sacks. Those aren't bad numbers. LSU's offense, on the other hand, last week, I think, did some great things. They're averaging 33 points a game on 65 plays, not turning it over a ton. 1.5% of the time. They throw it 61% of the time. 7.4 per passing play, 4.4 per rushing play. But they did find something working last week in the rushing game. Really loved the way Caden Durham ran the ball 11 times for 98 yards, 2 scores, just showed some burst there. Nussmeier was solid. 285 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick. That's not an easy defense to play against. Feels like he's getting more comfortable with Aaron Anderson and Kyren Lacy. Of course, they've got one of the better tight ends around in Mason Taylor. I felt like LSU's offense really took some big strides last week, although did have 2 pick sixes wiped off the board by a horse collar tackle and another one where Carolina hit Nussmeier during the play in just a weird call, but I guess it's by the rules. So it just was a real mixed bag for the Tigers. That would have looked a lot worse if those 2 defensive scores had held up. But I just thought that the Durham angle was what stood out to me the most, because we've talked about LSU with the running back injuries. Can they mount a running game? Felt like they started to last week.
Yeah, and they've got to. I feel like they have to get that established very soon before you get any deeper in the season, before you get back into SEC play. I think that's crucial for LSU.
Yeah. All right, picks. Tell me who and why.
Yeah, I've got LSU winning this one. I think they're the better team. I think they're starting to find themselves a little bit, and you get a big win on the road in a tough place like Columbia, South Carolina, with all the hype around the Gamecocks last week, and you find ways to win games, even if it didn't look great or didn't start great. They found a way to win, and that's what good teams do. So I've got LSU winning this one. There's still a lot to learn about the Tigers, but I think they get a big win against UCLA.
Yeah, I think LSU is the better team. I'm just not sure how much better. Is it what the odds makers have around 23? Is it what my models got, which is around 18? I just don't know. It feels like UCLA is a little better than the final scores have shown on paper. But I hadn't seen him play either. And look, if you struggle to beat Hawaii 16-13, you might have some issues. So I'm going with LSU at home as the miles are going to continue to pile up for UCLA and travel. And I think I'll certainly expect the Tigers to win this one in double digits. Thanks for watching us here at Southeastern 16, where we cover baseball, basketball, and football year-round. Caroline.smith@southeastern14.com if you'd like to advertise, and we do reach millions a year. For Chase Robinson, I'm Chris Lee. You're watching Southeastern 16 presented by BetOnline.